The wagon lurched to a stop outside the saloon in Malad City, Idaho, and Willow Lancaster knew her life as she had known it was over. She pressed her face against the grimy slats, watching dust devils spin across the main street in the autumn of 1883, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Her father had gambled away everything they owned, then borrowed more from men who did not forgive debts, and when the collectors came, he had sold the only thing left of value, his 20-year-old daughter. The man who dragged her from the wagon was not the one who had purchased her. That man, a saloon owner named Dutch Carmichael, waited inside his establishment, counting coins and examining the papers that made Willow his property for the next 5 years. The debt had been $1,800, an impossible sum that might as well have been $1 million. Her father had wept as they took her, but not enough to stop them. Not enough to throw himself in front of the wagon or put a gun to his own head rather than let his child pay for his sins. Inside the saloon, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and the sour smell of spilled whiskey. Dutch Carmichael was a heavy man with small eyes that crawled over Willow like insects. He held up the papers, squinting at them in the dim light filtering through dirty windows. "Says here you can read and write," Dutch said. His voice was wet, phlegmy. "That true?" "Yes, sir," Willow said, keeping her eyes down. Her mother had taught her before the fever took her 6 years ago. "Good. You will keep my books then and serve drinks and whatever else I tell you. You try to run and the law brings you back. These papers are legal, signed by your father and witness proper. You belong to me until the debt is paid, and the way I figure interest, that will not be for a good long while." Willow said nothing. There was nothing to say. The injustice of it burned in her chest, but injustice and a nickel might buy you a cup of coffee. The world did not care about fair. She spent her first week learning the saloon's rhythms. She served whiskey to cowboys and miners, calculated tabs in the ledger, and slept on a cot in a storage room that smelled of mouse droppings and mildew. Dutch watched her constantly, but he had not touched her yet, and she thanked God for small mercies. Some of the other girls who worked the saloon were not so fortunate. It was on the 8th day that Elijah Turner walked through the door. He was tall, lean in the way of men who spent their lives in the saddle, with dark hair that curled at his collar and eyes the color of a high country lake. He moved with an easy grace, confident but not arrogant, and when he approached the bar he touched the brim of his hat to Willow. "Whiskey, please, madam," he said. His voice was low, pleasant. Willow poured, trying not to meet his eyes. She had learned quickly that eye contact with customers led to conversations, and conversations led to expectations she could not afford. But Elijah was not like the other men. He did not leer or grab at her. He sipped his whiskey slowly, watching the card game in the corner with mild interest. After a while he spoke again. "You are new here." It was not a question, but Willow answered anyway. "Yes, sir. You do not look happy about it." Willow's hand stilled on the glass she was wiping. She looked up then, meeting his eyes. They were kind, she realized. Genuinely kind, not the false kindness men wore when they wanted something. "Happiness is not required for the work," she said carefully. Something shifted in Elijah's expression. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Are you here by choice?" The question was so unexpected that Willow nearly laughed. Nearly. Instead, she felt tears prick at her eyes and she blinked them back furiously. She could not afford to cry, could not afford to show weakness. "That is not your concern," she said, and turned away to serve another customer. But Elijah kept coming back. Every evening for a week, he sat at the bar, nursed a single whiskey, and talked to Willow in that low, gentle voice. He told her about his ranch 15 miles north of Malad City, about the horses he raised, about the mountains in spring when the wildflowers turned the meadows into carpets of color. He never asked her personal questions again, never pushed, but his presence became a bright spot in Willow's gray existence. On the 10th day of his visits, Dutch Carmichael noticed. "That Turner boy is sweet on you," Dutch said, his breath hot and sour in Willow's ear. "Maybe I should raise your rates. Man wants to court my property, he should pay for the privilege." Willow's stomach turned. "He is just a customer." "He is more than that, and we both know it." Dutch grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "You remember who you belong to, girl. You even think about running off with some cowboy, and I will have the law on you so fast your head will spin. Then I will have you working upstairs with the other girls. Papers be damned." That night, when Elijah came in, Willow could barely look at him. Her arm throbbed where Dutch had gripped it, and she knew there would be bruises in the morning. "Are you all right?" Elijah asked immediately. "Fine," Willow said, but her voice cracked. Elijah's jaw tightened. He looked around the saloon, his gaze landing on Dutch, who was watching them from across the room with a satisfied smile. "What hold does he have on you?" Elijah asked quietly. Willow's hands shook as she poured his whiskey. She should not tell him, should not involve him in her mess. But she was so tired, so desperately tired of carrying it all alone. "Debt," she whispered. "My father's debt. Dutch holds papers on me, 5 years of service or until the debt is paid." Elijah went very still. "Papers? You mean like an indenture contract, something like that?" "How much is the debt?" Willow told him, watched his eyes widen slightly at the amount. "And how much has been paid off?" "None. Dutch says the interest keeps it growing, says I will likely be here much longer than 5 years. Elijah's knuckles were white where he gripped his glass. "That is not legal. That is slavery." "It is legal enough when you have papers and a judge who looks the other way," Willow said bitterly. "This is not Boston or San Francisco. This is Idaho territory, and Dutch Carmichael knows the right people." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, laid a coin on the bar, and left without another word. Willow's heart sank. She had frightened him off, she realized. He wanted no part of her troubles. She could not blame him. What sensible man would involve himself in such a mess? But the next evening, Elijah returned. He sat at the bar as usual, ordered his whiskey, and waited until Dutch was distracted before sliding an envelope across to Willow. "Do not open it here," he said quietly. "Wait until you are alone." Willow slipped the envelope into her apron pocket, her heart racing. Later, in her tiny storage room, she opened it with shaking hands. Inside was $2,000 in banknotes. She nearly dropped it. $2,000. More money than she had ever seen in her life. More than enough to pay her father's debt and the supposed interest. But beneath the money was a note in a strong, clear hand. "Do not give this to him. I have a better plan. Trust me. E.T." Willow did not sleep that night. She lay on her cot, the envelope hidden beneath her thin mattress, and tried to understand what was happening. Why would Elijah Turner, a man she had known for less than 2 weeks, give her such a fortune? What did he want in return? Men did not give without expecting something back. That was a lesson her father had taught her well. The next day dragged by with agonizing slowness. Willow jumped at every sound, certain Dutch could somehow sense the money hidden in her room. But evening finally came, and with it, Elijah. He was not alone. He was accompanied by a thin man in a dusty suit who carried a leather satchel. "Miss Lancaster," Elijah said formally. "This is Mr. Cornelius Webb, an attorney from Pocatello. Mr. Webb, this is Miss Willow Lancaster." The attorney nodded to her. "Miss Lancaster, Mr. Turner has retained my services on your behalf. I understand you are currently bound by a contract to Mr. Dutch Carmichael." Willow's mouth was dry. "Yes, sir. I would like to examine those papers, if possible." Dutch had noticed the commotion and was making his way over, his face darkening. "What is this about?" "This is about the contract you hold on Miss Lancaster," Mr. Webb said calmly. "I am an attorney, and I would like to review the documents to ensure their legality." "They are legal enough," Dutch growled. "Got a judge's signature and everything." "Then you will have no objection to letting me examine them," Mr. Webb said. It was not a question. Dutch's eyes narrowed, but he was smart enough to know he could not refuse without looking guilty. He stomped to his office and returned with a sheaf of papers, which he thrust at Mr. Webb. The attorney took his time, reading through each page carefully while the saloon fell quiet around them. Willow stood frozen behind the bar, hardly daring to breathe. Elijah stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, and somehow that made her feel safer. Finally, Mr. Webb looked up. "Mr. Carmichael, these papers are fraudulent." "Like hell they are," Dutch sputtered. "The signature you claim is from Judge Patterson is a forgery. I know the judge personally, and this is not his hand. Furthermore, the interest terms you have outlined are usurious and illegal under Idaho territorial law. This contract is worthless." Dutch's face went purple. "Now you listen here." "No, you listen," Elijah said, and there was steel in his voice now. "Miss Lancaster is not your property. She never was. You have been holding her under false pretenses." "Her father signed her over," Dutch said desperately. "I got his signature right there." "A father cannot sell his adult child," Mr. Webb said. "That practice ended with the 13th Amendment. These papers are worthless, and if you attempt to enforce them, I will see you prosecuted for fraud and false imprisonment." The saloon was dead silent now. Every eye was on Dutch, watching him realize he had been beaten. "Get out," Dutch said finally, his voice strangled. "Get out of my saloon." "Gladly," Elijah said. He held out his hand to Willow. "Miss Lancaster." Willow stared at his hand, at the escape he was offering. It felt like a dream, too good to be real. "Come on," Elijah said gently. "You are free now, free." The word was foreign, impossible. Willow reached out slowly and placed her hand in Elijah's. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. She walked out of that saloon and did not look back. Outside, in the cool evening air, Willow's legs nearly gave out. Elijah caught her, his hand steadying on her shoulders. "Easy now," he said. "You are safe." "I do not understand," Willow said, and hated how her voice shook. "Why did you do this? What do you want from me?" Elijah's eyes were serious. "I want nothing from you. No one should be held against their will. Those papers Dutch had were obvious forgeries to anyone who cared to look close. I just needed Mr. Webb to make it official." "But the money—" "I am keeping the money," Elijah said. "You do not owe Dutch Carmichael anything. Those papers were worthless. But my father's debt is your father's problem, not yours." Elijah's voice was firm. "You are not responsible for paying his gambling debts with your freedom." Willow felt tears streaming down her face, and she could not stop them. Great, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Elijah pulled her close, let her cry against his chest while Mr. Webb politely looked away. "What do I do now?" Willow asked when she could finally speak. "I have nowhere to go." "No money. Nothing." "You have choices," Elijah said. "Mr. Webb can help you find respectable work here in Malad City if you want to stay." Or, he hesitated. "My ranch needs a bookkeeper. The pay is $30 a month plus room and board." "It is hard work and it is isolated, but it is honest work and you would be free." Willow pulled back to look at him. "Why are you helping me?" Elijah was quiet for a moment. "My mother was in a situation similar to yours once. A long time ago, before she met my father. A man held a debt over her head and used it to control her. My father helped her escape. He taught me that when you see injustice, you do not look away, you act. Is your mother still alive? No, she passed 5 years ago, but I like to think she would approve of this. Willow looked into Elijah's eyes and saw only sincerity, only kindness. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. I would like to work at your ranch, she said, if the offer is real. It is real, Elijah said and smiled. It transformed his whole face, made him look younger. We can leave in the morning if you like, unless you have things you need to collect. Willow thought of her small room, the threadbare dress and worn shoes that were her only possessions. I have nothing worth going back for. Mr. Webb cleared his throat. I have a colleague in town, Mrs. Patterson, who runs a boarding house. I am certain she would be happy to give you a room for the night, Miss Lancaster. It would be more proper than traveling tonight. Thank you, Willow said, for everything. Mr. Webb smiled. Thank Mr. Turner. He is the one who rode all the way to Pocatello to fetch me. Now, let us get you settled. That night, in a clean room at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, Willow lay in a real bed with clean sheets and tried to comprehend what had happened. She was free. After 2 weeks of captivity that had felt like a lifetime, she was free. And tomorrow she would ride north with Elijah Turner to a ranch in the mountains, to a life she could not yet imagine. She fell asleep thinking of lake blue eyes and a gentle voice, and for the first time in months, she did not have nightmares. Morning came bright and cold. Elijah arrived with a wagon and 2 horses tied to the back. He helped Willow up onto the wagon seat and they set off north through the high desert country. Tell me about your ranch, Willow said after they had been riding for an hour. The silence was not uncomfortable, but she wanted to hear his voice. It is not much yet, Elijah said. 300 acres along the Snake River. I have been building it for 5 years now. Got a herd of about 60 horses at the moment, mostly Mustangs I have tamed and trained. I sell them to the army and to ranchers who need good working stock. You run it alone, mostly. I have a man named Jack who helps with the rougher work, and a Shoshone woman named Sarah comes in twice a week to help with cooking and cleaning. But yes, mostly alone. Is it lonely? Elijah glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Sometimes, but I like the quiet. Like being able to think. They rode in silence for a while longer. The landscape was stark and beautiful, all rolling hills covered in sagebrush with mountains rising in the distance. The air smelled clean, sharp with the promise of winter. Can I ask you something? Willow said finally. Anything? How much did it cost? To hire Mr. Webb, I mean. That is not your concern. It is my concern if I am in your debt now instead of Dutch's. Elijah pulled the wagon to a stop. He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. You are not in my debt. I want you to understand that. You owe me nothing. The money I paid Mr. Webb is mine to spend as I choose, and I chose to spend it helping you. That does not give me any claim on you. Then why did you do it? Willow asked, frustrated. People do not just help strangers out of kindness. There is always a price. Not always, Elijah said quietly. Sometimes people help because it is the right thing to do, because they cannot stand by and watch injustice happen. Willow wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to believe that kind of goodness existed in the world. But she had learned hard lessons about trust. I will work hard, she said instead. I will earn my keep. I do not doubt it, Elijah said, and urged the horses forward again. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the mountains gold and pink. It was beautiful in a raw, untamed way. The ranch house was small but well built, with smoke rising from the chimney. A barn stood nearby, and beyond that, Willow could see the river glinting in the fading light. Home, Elijah said simply. A man emerged from the barn as they pulled up. He was older, grizzled, with kind eyes and a weathered face. "This is Jack Brennan," Elijah said. "Jack, this is Miss Willow Lancaster. She will be keeping our books and helping around the place." Jack nodded to Willow. "Madam, good to have you." Elijah helped Willow down from the wagon. Her legs were stiff from the long ride and she stumbled slightly. Elijah steadied her, his hands gentle. "Careful," he said. "Let me show you inside." The house was simple but clean. A large room served as kitchen, dining, and living space with a stone fireplace at one end. Two doors led to what Willow assumed were bedrooms. "That room is mine," Elijah said, pointing to one door. "That one is yours. Sarah made it up fresh yesterday when I told her you were coming." Willow's room was small but comfortable. A real bed, a dresser, a chair by the window. It was more than she had dared hope for. "Thank you," she said, her throat tight. "Supper will be ready soon," Elijah said. "Take your time settling in." Over the next weeks, Willow fell into the rhythm of ranch life. She woke early, helped prepare breakfast, then spent her mornings working on the ranch's accounts. Elijah had not been exaggerating when he said the books needed attention. Years of records were jumbled and incomplete. Willow set about organizing them with a determination that surprised her. It felt good to be useful, to be doing real work that mattered. In the afternoons, she helped with whatever needed doing. She learned to feed the chickens, gather eggs, mend fences. Her hands, soft from weeks in the saloon, grew calloused and strong. Elijah was patient with her mistakes, showing her how to do things without making her feel foolish. He treated her with a respect Willow was not accustomed to, asking her opinion on things, listening when she spoke. Sarah, the Shoshone woman who came to help, became a friend. She was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through her black hair and eyes that saw too much. She taught Willow how to make bread, how to preserve vegetables, how to read the weather in the shape of clouds. "You are good for him," Sarah said one day as they worked together in the kitchen. "Who?" Willow asked, though she knew Elijah. "He has been alone too long. It is not good for a man to be so alone." "He helped me," Willow said. "That does not mean anything more." Sarah gave her a knowing look but said nothing. The truth was, Willow thought about Elijah constantly. She watched him work with the horses, admired his patience and skill. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way his voice dropped lower when he was tired. She found herself wanting to make him smile, to hear him laugh, but she was afraid. Afraid of misunderstanding, of assuming feelings that were not there. Afraid of being wrong again. Winter came early that year, sweeping down from the mountains with snow and bitter cold. The ranch slowed down. The horses huddled in the barn and the humans huddled by the fire. It was on one of these long, dark evenings that Elijah finally spoke of more than work. They were sitting by the fire, Willow mending shirts, and Elijah carving something from a piece of wood. Jack had gone to his cabin for the night, and Sarah would not return until the weather cleared. They were alone in the warm, firelit space. "Can I tell you something?" Elijah said suddenly. Willow looked up from her sewing. "Of course. I did not help you just because it was the right thing to do." He kept his eyes on his carving, his hands moving steadily. "I mean, it was the right thing." But that was not the only reason. Willow's heart began to beat faster. What was the other reason? "From the first moment I saw you in that saloon, I could not stop thinking about you." Elijah's voice was low, almost hesitant. "The sadness in your eyes, the way you tried to be invisible. I wanted to know your story, wanted to help. But more than that, I wanted to know you." He finally looked up, meeting her eyes. "I know it is too soon. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want you to know that my feelings for you are not those of an employer for an employee. I care about you, Willow, more than I probably should." Willow set down her sewing with shaking hands. "I care about you too," she said, the words tumbling out. I have been so afraid to admit it, even to myself. Afraid you would think I was trying to repay you with affection, or that I was reading things wrong. You are not reading things wrong, Elijah said. He set aside his carving and moved closer, kneeling beside her chair. I want to court you properly if you will let me. I want to give you the time and space to heal from what you have been through. I want you to have the freedom to choose me, not because you owe me anything, but because you want to. Willow reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. I do choose you, she said softly. I think I have been choosing you since the day you asked if I was there by choice, since you cared enough to look and see me. Elijah's hand came up to cover hers. I see you, Willow. I see your strength and your kindness. I see how hard you work, how much you care. I see all of you, and I want all of you if you will have me. I will, Willow said, and then Elijah was kissing her, gentle and sweet, and it felt like coming home. They took their time after that, learning each other slowly. Elijah courted Willow the way she deserved, with long conversations and stolen kisses. He brought her wildflowers when the snow melted in spring, taught her to ride so they could explore the mountains together. He held her when she woke from nightmares about her father, about Dutch Carmichael, about being trapped again. You are safe, he would murmur into her hair. You are free. No one will ever hold you against your will again. I promise you that. And slowly, Willow began to believe it. Spring turned to summer, and the ranch bloomed with life. Willow's accounting had revealed they were doing better financially than Elijah had realized, and they used the extra money to buy more breeding stock. The horse herd grew. It was on a warm evening in July, with the sun setting over the mountains, that Elijah proposed. They were sitting by the river, watching the water run silver over rocks. Elijah had been quiet all day, distracted in a way that was unlike him. What is wrong? Willow asked finally. Nothing is wrong, Elijah said. He took her hand, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. I am nervous. About what? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Willow's breath caught. I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, Elijah said. But I have been certain about you since the beginning. You are the strongest, kindest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to be better than I am. He opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with a small diamond. Will you marry me, Willow Lancaster? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice? Willow was crying, but they were good tears this time, happy tears. Yes, she said. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Elijah slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and the river ran on beside them, singing its ancient song. They were married in late August in the small church in Malad City. Sarah stood with Willow, and Jack stood with Elijah. It was a small ceremony, simple and heartfelt. Willow wore a new dress, pale blue like Elijah's eyes, and carried wildflowers from the ranch. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Elijah kissed her in front of God and witnesses, Willow felt a joy so profound it seemed impossible that she had ever been unhappy. The ranch became theirs together in a way it had not been before. Willow was no longer an employee or even a guest. She was home. She was Elijah's wife, his partner, his equal in all things. They worked side by side through that fall, preparing for winter. They laughed together, argued occasionally about small things, and made love in their shared bed with a passion and tenderness that left Willow breathless. I love you, Elijah would whisper in the darkness. I love you so much. I love you too, Willow would answer, and mean it with every fiber of her being. Winter came again, but this time Willow did not mind the cold. She had Elijah to keep her warm, his arms around her at night, his presence beside her during the day. It was in the deep cold of January that Willow realized she was pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses and her breasts were tender. She told Sarah first, needing to be certain before she told Elijah. "You are with child," Sarah confirmed, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "A baby will be a blessing on this house." That night after supper, Willow took Elijah's hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said. Elijah's eyes went wide. "Truly, truly." He let out a whoop of joy that made Willow laugh, then swept her up and spun her around the kitchen. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonderingly. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Willow asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Elijah said. He knelt down and pressed a kiss to her stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your papa, and I already love you more than I can say." Willow ran her fingers through his dark hair, overcome with emotion. A year ago, she had been trapped, hopeless, certain her life was over. Now she was married to a man she loved beyond measure, carrying his child, free in every way that mattered. The pregnancy was not easy. Willow was sick through much of the early months, unable to keep food down. Elijah was patient and attentive, bringing her water, holding her hair back when she was ill, never complaining about the extra work he had to take on. By spring, the sickness had passed and Willow's belly began to round. She felt the baby move for the first time in April, a flutter like butterfly wings, and she cried with the wonder of it. "Feel," she said to Elijah, placing his hand where she had felt the movement. They waited together, barely breathing until it came again. A tiny kick against Elijah's palm. "Our baby," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Our beautiful baby." Summer arrived, hot and dry. Willow's belly grew large and she moved more slowly, but she refused to stop working entirely. She kept the books, helped in the kitchen, did what she could. Elijah fretted over her, worried she was doing too much, but Willow was determined. This was her home, her ranch, her life. She would not be an invalid. The baby came on a hot August night, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Willow's water broke just after supper, and Elijah sent Jack riding hard for the midwife in Malad City. Sarah stayed with Willow, coaching her through the contractions, helping her walk, rubbing her back. Elijah held her hand and whispered encouragements, his face pale with worry. "You can do this," he said. "You are the strongest person I know." The labor was long and hard. Willow labored through the night and into the next morning. The midwife arrived at dawn and took charge, her calm competence a relief. "You are doing well," the midwife said. "The baby is coming. Just a little more." And then, with a final push that felt like it might tear her in two, the baby was born. "A boy," the midwife announced, and Willow heard her son's first cry. They placed him on her chest, still wet and wailing, and Willow looked down at the tiny, perfect creature she and Elijah had made. "Hello, sweet boy," she whispered. "Hello, my love." Elijah was beside her, his face wet with tears. "He is perfect," Elijah said. "Willow, he is perfect." They named him Emmett, after Elijah's father. Emmett Turner, with dark hair like his father and gray eyes that might turn blue. He was small and red-faced and absolutely beautiful. Elijah was a devoted father from the first moment. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with Emmett when he cried at night, sang to him in a surprisingly good voice. Willow watched them together, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "I cannot believe he is ours," she said one night, watching Elijah rock their sleeping son. "Ours," Elijah agreed. "Our son, our family." The months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and stolen moments of joy. Emmett grew and changed, learning to smile, to laugh, to reach for things. The ranch thrived, the horse herd growing larger and more profitable. When Emmett was 6 months old, Willow received a letter. It was from her father. She stared at it for a long time, her hands shaking before she finally opened it. The letter was short. Her father wrote that he had gotten help for his gambling problem, that he was sober now and trying to make amends. He asked for her forgiveness, said he understood if she could never give it. He said he heard she was married and happy, and that was all he could hope for. Willow read it 3 times, then showed it to Elijah. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Willow thought for a long time. "I do not know if I can forgive him," she said finally. "But I think I can try, for my own peace if nothing else," she wrote back. A short letter, careful and measured. She said she was glad he was getting help. She said she was happy now, that she had a good husband and a beautiful son. She said she needed more time before she could consider seeing him. Her father wrote back a month later, saying he understood, that he would wait as long as it took. Willow put the letters away and focused on her life, on her family, on the present rather than the past. Emmett's first birthday was a joyful celebration. Sarah made a cake, and Jack carved a wooden horse for the boy. Emmett sat in his high chair and smashed cake into his face, laughing with delight. "To our family," Elijah said, raising a glass. "To my beautiful wife and my perfect son, to the life we have built together." "To us," Willow echoed and meant it with all her heart. The years passed peacefully. Emmett grew into a sturdy toddler, then a curious little boy. He followed Elijah around the ranch, copying everything his father did. He had his father's gentle nature and his mother's quick mind. When Emmett was 3, Willow became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1888, she gave birth to a daughter they named Eleanor, after Elijah's mother. Eleanor was tiny and fierce from the start, with dark eyes and lungs that could wake the dead. Emmett was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her. "Gentle," Willow would remind him. "She is still very small." "I know, Mama," Emmett would say seriously. "I am careful." Elijah was just as enamored with Eleanor as he had been with Emmett. He would hold her for hours, talking to her about the horses, about the ranch, about all the things he would teach her when she was bigger. "Our daughter will be able to ride and rope just as well as any boy," Elijah declared. Willow smiled. "I have no doubt." The ranch continued to prosper. They expanded, buying more land, building a larger barn. They hired 2 more hands to help with the work. Willow's accounting showed they were doing better than they had ever dreamed. "We could move to town," Elijah said one evening. "Buy a fancy house. Live easier." "Do you want to?" Willow asked. Elijah looked around their little house at Emmett playing with his wooden horses and Eleanor sleeping in her cradle. "No," he said. "This is home. This is where I want to be." "Good," Willow said, "because I do not want to leave either." When Emmett was 6 and Eleanor was 3, Willow's father came to visit. He had written asking if he could meet his grandchildren, and after much thought and discussion with Elijah, Willow had agreed. Her father had aged dramatically. His hair was white, his face lined. But his eyes were clear, and he carried himself with a humility that had not been there before. "Thank you for seeing me," he said when he arrived. Willow nodded stiffly. "This is my husband, Elijah Turner, and these are our children, Emmett and Eleanor." Her father's eyes filled with tears. "They are beautiful. You have done well for yourself, daughter." "No thanks to you," Willow said, and there was still bitterness in her voice. "No," her father agreed. "No thanks to me at all. What I did was unforgivable, I know that, but I wanted you to know that I have changed. I have not gambled in 5 years. I work as a clerk in a store in Utah. It is a simple life, but it is honest." They talked for a long time, sitting on the porch while the children played. Her father told her about his recovery, about the work he had done to make himself better. Willow told him about her life, about the ranch, about Elijah and the children. "I am glad you are happy," her father said finally. "That is more than I deserve." "Yes," Willow said, "it is." But when her father prepared to leave, Willow found herself hugging him. It was stiff, awkward, but it was a start. "You can write," she said, "to the children, if you want." "I would like that very much," her father said after he left. Elijah found Willow on the porch, staring out at the mountains. "How are you feeling?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. "I do not know," Willow admitted. "Confused, sad, angry, relieved, all at once." "That sounds about right," Elijah said. "Forgiveness is complicated. Do you think I did the right thing?" "I think you did what felt right for you. That is all anyone can do." Willow leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for standing by me through all of this." "Always," Elijah said. "I will always stand by you." The children grew. Emmett started school in Malad City, riding into town each day with Jack. Alina was wild and fearless, climbing trees and chasing chickens and driving her parents to distraction. "She is just like you," Elijah would say when Alina did something particularly daring. "She is just like you," Willow would counter. "Stubborn and impossible," but they both adored her. When Emmett was 10 and Alina was 7, Willow found herself pregnant once more. It was unexpected but not unwelcome. "Another baby," Elijah said, his hand on her stomach. "We are blessed. This pregnancy was harder than the previous two." Willow was older now, nearly 35, and her body felt the strain. But in the spring of 1895, she gave birth to twin boys, healthy and loud. They named them William and Wesley, and suddenly their house was very full and very loud. Emmett and Alina were wonderful with their baby brothers, helping to feed and change and rock them. Willow watched her 4 children together and marveled at how her life had turned out. "Do you ever think about how things might have been different?" she asked Elijah one night. The twins were finally asleep, and they had stolen a few moments of quiet. "Different how? If you had not come into that saloon that day, if you had not cared enough to help." Elijah pulled her close. "I try not to think about that. It is too terrible to imagine." "I would have found a way to escape eventually," Willow said, though she was not sure she believed it. "Maybe," Elijah said. "But I am glad you did not have to. I am glad I was there. I am glad every single day that you are in my life." "Me too," Willow whispered. "Me too." The years continued their steady march. The children grew and changed. Emmett became a fine horseman like his father, with plans to take over the ranch someday. Alina shocked everyone by declaring she wanted to be a teacher, and Elijah and Willow supported her dream wholeheartedly. The twins, William and Wesley, were identical in appearance but opposite in temperament. William was quiet and thoughtful, always reading. Wesley was outgoing and mischievous, always getting into trouble. The ranch continued to thrive. They were prosperous now, well respected in the community. Willow served on the school board and Elijah was elected to the town council. They had built a good life together, Willow thought. A life worth living. Jack passed away when the twins were 8, dying peacefully in his sleep. They buried him on the ranch, under a cottonwood tree by the river. Elijah carved the headstone himself, and Willow planted wildflowers on the grave. "He was a good man," Elijah said at the simple ceremony. "The best," Willow agreed. Sarah was still with them, ancient now but still sharp as a tack. She doted on the children, teaching them the old Shoshone stories, showing them how to read the land. "You have done well," Sarah told Willow one day. They were in the kitchen, preparing supper while the children played outside. "I have been lucky," Willow said. "Not luck," Sarah said firmly. "Strength, courage, you made good choices even when it was hard." Willow thought about that, about the girl she had been, trapped in that saloon, hopeless and afraid, about the woman she had become, strong and free. "Thank you," she said to Sarah, "for everything." Sarah smiled. "You are welcome, child." Emmett married when he was 22 to a sweet girl named Rose from Malad City. They had a small wedding at the ranch, and Willow cried happy tears throughout the ceremony. "Our boy is grown," she said to Elijah that night. "Our boy is a man," Elijah agreed. "A good man." Alina went to college in Utah, studying to be a teacher. She wrote long letters home full of her adventures and studies. Willow saved everyone. The twins were 15 now, tall and strong. They worked the ranch alongside Elijah, learning everything he had to teach. Elijah himself was graying at the temples now, with lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. But he was still strong, still capable, still the man Willow had fallen in love with all those years ago. "You remember the day we met?" Willow asked him one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. It was their favorite time of day, these quiet moments together. "Every detail," Elijah said. "You were behind the bar in that saloon, looking like you wanted to disappear. I thought you were the saddest, most beautiful thing I had ever seen." "I was terrified," Willow admitted. "Of Dutch, of the future, of everything. And now I am happy," Willow said simply. "I have a good husband, wonderful children, a home I love. I am free, truly free." Elijah took her hand, raised it to his lips. "I am glad," he said. "I am glad I walked into that saloon. Glad I asked if you were there by choice. Glad for every single moment that brought us here." "So am I," Willow said. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the mountains turn gold in the fading light. Willow thought about the papers Dutch Carmichael had held over her, the fraudulent documents that had made her a prisoner. She thought about Elijah burning those papers, declaring her free. But she had not truly been free until she chose to be. Until she chose Elijah, chose this life, chose herself. That was the real freedom, she realized. Not the absence of chains, but the presence of choice. Sarah passed away the winter Alina graduated from college. She died in her sleep, peacefully, and they buried her next to Jack under the cottonwoods. "She was like a mother to me," Willow said at the grave. "She loved you like a daughter," Elijah said, his arm around her shoulders. Alina came home that spring, ready to start teaching at the school in Malad City. She was 22 now, confident and capable. Willow looked at her daughter and felt a fierce pride. "You are going to change lives," Willow told her. "I hope so, Mama," Alina said. "I want to help children the way you and Papa helped people. I want to make a difference." "You will," Willow said with certainty. Emmett and Rose had their first baby that summer, a boy they named Jack after the old ranch hand. Willow held her grandson and marveled at the continuation of their family line. "He is beautiful," she told Emmett. "Thanks, Ma," Emmett said, looking at his son with wonder. "I hope I can be half the parent you and Pa were to me." "You will be wonderful," Willow assured him. The twins were 18 now, finished with school and working the ranch full-time. They were good boys, hardworking and honest. Willow was proud of all her children. Elijah was 60 now, slowing down a bit but still active. They had hired more hands to help with the heavy work, and Emmett was taking on more of the ranch management. "I am getting old," Elijah said one day, only half joking. "We are getting old together," Willow corrected. She was 50 now herself, her dark hair streaked with silver. "Would you change anything?" Elijah asked. If you could go back, Willow thought about it. About the pain and fear of her early years, about her father's betrayal, about those terrible weeks in the saloon. "No," she said finally. "Because all of it led me here. To you, to our children, to this life. I would not trade this for anything." Elijah kissed her, soft and sweet. "Neither would I." Alina married a few years later to a young man named Thomas who taught at the school with her. It was another beautiful wedding at the ranch, and Willow cried again, happy tears for her daughter. Wesley announced he wanted to join the army, and though Willow worried, She supported his choice. He left for training, tall and proud in his uniform. William decided to go to college to study law. "I want to help people," he said. "Like Pa helped you, Ma, I want to fight injustice." Willow hugged him tight. "I am proud of you," she said. The ranch continued generation to generation. Emmett and Rose had 3 more children. Eleanor and Thomas had 2. The house was often full of grandchildren, and Willow loved it. She taught her grandchildren to read and write, told them stories about the old days. She never hid the truth of how she and Elijah had met, though she softened some of the harder details for young ears. "Your grandfather was a hero," she told them. "He saw someone in trouble and he helped. That is what good people do." Elijah would shake his head at this. "I just did what was right," he would say. "Exactly," Willow would reply. "You did what was right when others would have looked away. That makes you a hero." They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a large party at the ranch. Friends and family came from miles around. The house and barn were decorated, and there was music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. 25 years, Elijah said in his speech, his arm around Willow. 25 years with the most remarkable woman I have ever known. She has made my life richer than I ever could have imagined. Here is to 25 more. Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. Willow kissed Elijah, not caring who was watching. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself," Elijah said. "I just opened the door. You were the one brave enough to walk through it." Maybe he was right, Willow thought. Maybe she had saved herself. But she could not have done it without him. Without his kindness, his courage, his unwavering support, they had saved each other, really. That was what love was, she realized. Not one person rescuing another, but 2 people choosing each other over and over every single day. The years passed more quickly now. Grandchildren grew and had children of their own. The ranch expanded again, with Emmett running it capably. Elijah retired gradually, spending more time with Willow, enjoying the fruits of their labor. They traveled a bit, taking a train to San Francisco to see the ocean. Willow stood on the beach, her hand in Elijah's, and marveled at the vastness of it all. "Makes you feel small, does it not?" Elijah said. "No," Willow said. "It makes me feel grateful. Grateful for every moment, every choice that led us here." Elijah squeezed her hand. "Me too." They returned to the ranch, to the mountains and the river, to the place they loved most in the world. Willow's father had continued to write over the years, and she had slowly, carefully rebuilt a relationship with him. When he passed away, peacefully at 78, Willow cried, not for what they had lost, but for what they had managed to salvage. "I forgave him," she told Elijah. "In the end, I really did forgive him." "That takes strength," Elijah said. "So does loving someone the way you have loved me," Willow replied. They were in their 70s now, moving slower but still together, still in love, still choosing each other. Elijah's health began to fail when he was 75. Nothing dramatic, just a slow wearing down. He tired more easily, needed more rest. "I am not ready to leave you yet," he told Willow one night. "Then do not," she said, fierce. "Stay with me, we have more time." And they did have more time. 2 more years of sunsets on the porch, of grandchildren and great-grandchildren visiting, of quiet mornings and peaceful nights. Elijah passed away in his sleep on a warm summer night, Willow beside him. He simply did not wake up. The doctor said his heart had given out, that it had been quick and painless. Willow sat beside his body, holding his still warm hand, and wept. She wept for the loss of him, for the empty years ahead, for the end of their story, but she also wept with gratitude. Gratitude for every single day they had shared, for the life they had built, for the love that had sustained them through everything. They buried Elijah under the cottonwoods, beside Jack and Sarah. The whole community came to pay respects. Emmett gave a eulogy that had everyone in tears. "My father was the best man I ever knew," Emmett said. "He taught me what it means to be good, to do right even when it is hard, to love completely and without reservation. I hope I can be half the man he was." Willow stood by the grave long after everyone else had left. She talked to Elijah, told him all the things she had not gotten to say. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for walking into that saloon. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." The wind whispered through the cottonwoods, and Willow chose to believe it was Elijah answering. She lived another 3 years after Elijah's death. She remained on the ranch, surrounded by family, still active and engaged with life. She taught her great-grandchildren to read, told them stories about their great-grandfather, about the Wild West they had never known. "Was Grandpa Elijah really a hero?" one little girl asked. "Yes," Willow said without hesitation. "He was the best kind of hero. The kind who saw someone in trouble and helped, expecting nothing in return. The kind who made the world better just by being in it." Willow passed away peacefully at 80, in the house she and Elijah had built together, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Her last words were, "Take me to Elijah." They buried her beside him under the cottonwoods. On her headstone Emmett had carved, "She was sold to pay her father's debts. A cowboy burned the papers and called her free. Then he called her wife. Then she called him home." The ranch continued, generation after generation. The story of Willow and Elijah became family legend, told and retold, a reminder of what love could do, of what courage looked like, of the power of choosing kindness, choosing each other, choosing freedom. And under the cottonwoods by the Snake River, where the wildflowers bloomed every spring, 2 souls rested side by side, together in death as they had been in life, their love story complete, their legacy living on in the family they had built together, in the life they had chosen, in the freedom they had fought for and won. It was a story that began with chains and ended with love. A story that proved that sometimes in this hard world, good people did good things simply because it was right. That love could heal old wounds. That freedom was not just the absence of bondage, but the presence of choice. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth living. And in the mountains of Idaho, where the wind still whispered through the cottonwoods and the river still sang its ancient song, the story lived on, a testament to 2 people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life in the light, who had loved fiercely and completely, who had proven that even in the Wild West, even in the hardest times, love could conquer all. Willow had been sold to pay her father's debts. Elijah had burned the papers and called her free. Then he had called her beloved, and she had called him home. And together they had built something beautiful and lasting, something that would echo through the generations, a love story for the ages, a reminder that kindness matters, that courage counts, that love, in the end, is the most powerful force of all. Their story was complete. Their love was eternal. Their legacy was the family they had built, the lives they had touched, the example they had set. In the end, that was everything. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was a life well lived, a love well earned, a freedom well fought for and won. And under the big sky of Idaho, their spirits rested together at last, forever and always, their story told, their love remembered, their freedom eternal.